Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the absolute ultimate hypothetical disaster. We're going to explore the complete, total collapse of the global internet. I mean, think about it. The internet has crept into literally every single aspect of our modern lives. We use it for work, for dating, for managing our bank accounts, for just finding our way to a new restaurant, you name it. But what happens if this invisible architecture that holds our entire society together just stops? What does that fallout actually look like? And maybe more importantly, what are the very real threats that could make this happen today? To set the stage, I want you to consider a short story called The Machine Stops, written by the novelist E.M. Forster. In it, he wrote about a civilization that was entirely dependent on this giant machine to fulfill all of its needs. He wrote, "There came a day when, without the slightest warning, without any previous hint of feebleness, the entire communication system broke down all over the world, and the world, as they understood it, ended." Now, you know what's truly eerie about this? Forster wrote that in 1909. Long before Wi-Fi or smartphones were even a thought, he completely predicted our modern fragile dependency on global connectivity. Fast forward to our present reality, and that dependency is absolute. It's absolutely crucial. In fact, our reliance on this network is so deep for basic survival and human connection that since July 1st, 2016, the United Nations actually declared internet access a basic human right. Think about that for a second. In just a few decades, we've gone from the internet being this niche, geeky research tool to being classified as a fundamental human right alongside food, water, and shelter. But to fully grasp how this vital resource could be snatched away, we really need to understand what it actually is. Okay, let's dive into this by cleanly separating two concepts that we honestly mix up all the time: the internet and the web. You might feel like an expert navigator of the digital world, but let's go back to basics. The internet is the physical infrastructure. It is a massive global network of networks, physically connecting millions of computers together. And it transfers data using various languages called protocols. Think BGP for routing traffic, DNS for finding addresses, or FTP for moving files. The web, on the other hand, is just one specific way of accessing information over that medium. It uses the HTTP protocol to transmit the web pages that you view on your browsers. So when we talk about the internet going down, we're not just talking about your favorite website failing to load. We're talking about the complete failure of that massive physical network of computers. So, has it ever gone down before? Well, not entirely, but parts of it definitely have. Back in 1988, the entire internet consisted of only about 60,000 computers. A 24-year-old computer whiz named Robert Tappan Morris Jr. decided to build a probe. He didn't want to destroy anything, actually. He just wanted to stealthily map out the limits of the internet. But on November 3rd, things went terribly wrong. The Morris worm, as it came to be known, rapidly replicated itself by guessing obvious passwords, breaking into email accounts, and then just emailing itself to new targets. It ended up infecting 6,000 computers, which was literally 10% of the early internet. Programs slowed to a crawl, networks clogged up with repetitive instructions, and administrators were completely locked out. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of cascading consequences in a connected system. That single rogue program, built as a mere experiment, managed to cause up to a staggering $10 million worth of damage. Morris actually became the first person ever convicted under the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. It served as a massive warning shot for the tech world. Now sure, security is way more robust today. A virus infecting just 6,000 machines wouldn't even make the morning headlines right now. But the core lesson remains. The network can be attacked. And today, the threats are vastly more sophisticated. Section 1. Modern threats. What could break the internet today? Which brings us to the present day. If 6,000 computers crashing caused millions in damage back in the 80s, what in the world could take down the billions of connected devices we rely on today? Experts generally categorize the major existential threats to our global connectivity into three wildly different buckets. First, we've got space weather, specifically solar flares. Second, there's physical cable cutting, which really highlights the surprising fragility of our network. And third, modern cyber warfare, in the form of massive botnets and DDoS attacks. Let's break down exactly how each of these could theoretically pull the plug on our digital world. Let's start with a threat from literally above: space weather. See, the sun operates on an 11-year cycle, and during a solar maximum, massive solar flares can erupt, causing intense geomagnetic storms here on Earth. The largest one ever recorded was the 1859 Carrington event. This solar flare was so unimaginably powerful that auroras appeared all over the globe, and literal sparks leaped right out of telegraph operators' equipment. If a solar storm of that exact magnitude hit Earth today, it would blow out transformers, melt down computer systems globally, and in theory, completely break the entire internet. We had a relatively weak solar maximum back in 2013, but if our luck runs out during a future peak, the disruption would be catastrophic. Now, what's really interesting about this next point is how reality completely shatters our illusion of this magical wireless cloud. When you think of the internet, you probably picture satellites beaming data through the sky, right? Well, actually, more than 99% of all global web traffic is entirely dependent on physical, deep-sea networks of fiber optic cables. Only 1% is relayed by satellites. At its most basic level, the internet is just a massive tangle of really, really long wires spanning across every ocean and continent. And those sub-oceanic cables, they're shockingly fragile. We're talking often only about 3 inches in diameter. Because the internet relies on these 3-inch cables, it is incredibly vulnerable to the most mundane physical threats. It seems crazy that something so critical is so flimsy, but it's totally true. Take March 2018, for example. An Australian bore operator accidentally cut through some fiber cables and single-handedly shut down major internet channels for all of New Zealand. And deep under the ocean, we have an even more bizarre problem: sharks. For some strange reason, maybe drawn to the electromagnetic fields, sharks actually love to gnaw on submarine cables. While a massive, coordinated effort to sever enough cables to take down the whole internet would be tough, these localized blackouts prove the undeniable physical fragility of our networks. Which leads us to a much more deliberate threat: cyber warfare. Hackers are now weaponizing our own devices against us by creating things called botnets. A botnet is basically a collection of interconnected, hijacked smart devices. Think things like your home Wi-Fi router or your webcam. Hackers take control of these and use them to send massive surges of data to servers, causing what's known as a distributed denial of service, or DDoS attack, which forces those servers offline. In January 2018, a botnet known as Reaper, made up of over 1 million hijacked devices, attacked the Netherlands' financial sector, crashing websites and disrupting critical services. And cybersecurity experts warn that malicious actors have been probing the defenses of the internet's critical backbone for years. Section 2. The apocalyptic blackout. The domino effect. So whether it's a massive solar flare, an unprecedented physical attack on our underwater cables, or a devastating global cyber attack, what actually happens if the network permanently dies? Well, to understand the scale of a total blackout, we have to first look at the cost of tiny, localized ones. Between the summer of 2015 and the summer of 2016, a series of small, brief internet blackouts contained to just a few particular countries cost the global economy at least $2.4 billion. That is just from minor temporary hiccups. If you extend that to the entire globe for a day, a week, or indefinitely, we aren't just talking about billions anymore. The economic effects become literally incalculable. If the internet went down forever, the dominoes would fall with terrifying speed. Instantly, trillion-dollar tech giants like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, they cease to exist. Due to the sudden overload, traditional telecommunications services would buckle and fail, ending the 24/7 news cycle and isolating our communities. All satellites shut down, meaning GPS collapses, which immediately grounds global air traffic and train networks. Then, the financial sector just freezes. ATMs fail. Banks would face the completely impossible task of manually clearing checks and transferring funds, triggering a massive global economic crisis. And because modern supply chains rely entirely on connected logistics, grocery store shelves would empty out in a matter of days. As a species, we would quite literally be thrown back in time, forced to solve a global crisis without any of the digital tools we rely on. Section 3. The practical pivot. Fixing everyday local access. So the crucial point here is, okay, everyone take a deep breath. For the vast majority of us, an outage isn't a shark chewing a cable in the Pacific. It's usually just a wonky browser setting. Before you start prepping for the end of the digital world, you should probably just make sure your browser is configured correctly. A lot of the time, you might find you can't even use basic search functions simply because a script blocker or a random privacy update changed your settings. If you're blocked, simply open your browser settings, navigate to Privacy and Security, find Site Settings, and make sure JavaScript is toggled to Allowed or True. Without JavaScript enabled locally, the interactive web effectively goes dark for you anyway. No apocalyptic Carrington event required. We've explored the massive physical infrastructure beneath our oceans, the looming threats from space and cyber warfare, and the downright terrifying domino effect that would occur if it all simply vanished. Our modern world is a beautifully complex, yet startlingly fragile machine, and it leaves us with one stark, lingering thought. Look around at everything you do in a single day. If the machine stops today, without the slightest warning,
Are you actually prepared? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.